Small talk is a huge difficulty, which I absolutely get. It's hard because what are we talking about? The weather? Like, does that mean that you hate me? It's hard to know. But I will say two things about that actually. And small talk is a building block of emotional connection. The things we're talking about might not be the most important, but the action of talking, the action of connecting with somebody else is so crucial.
Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. Shafer of Talks with Dr. Shafer. I'm so glad you're here. I'm a physician, mom, author, publisher, and I'm passionate about helping others reclaim their stories so they can build their most beautiful future. As you know, we talk a lot here on Talks with Dr. Shafer about reclaiming our voices and reclaiming our stories. We know that our voice affects the narrative of our story and how it is perceived and interpreted by our audience. Today, we have an expert on the show to help shed light on the importance of understanding how we can use our voice to elevate our experience and connect in ways we are craving to. Our guest, Jackie Romankow, is an actor, singer, and professional dialect and speech coach. When she isn't singing and acting professionally herself, she is supporting others and learning the incredibly important skills of public speaking as a coach at New York Speech Coaching in NYC. Jackie, thank you so much for being here. Now, there is good data to show that one of the most commonly held fears is that of public speaking. So,
Yes.
how did you end up as a professional coaching others in public speaking? You must have overcome some things yourself, or perhaps you never had that fear.
Amazing question. And actually, nobody's ever asked me that before. So I'm really going to need to dig back into the recesses of my brain to figure out where that came from. But to really start from the beginning, I loved theater as a kid, and I did a lot of voice lessons growing up. So I did a lot of singing, and I really found that those times were the moments where I felt the most myself, the most empowered, the strongest version of myself. And it's interesting because singing is notably a vulnerable thing. But I found that with my own coaches and my own teachers, being bolstered with my voice was something that brought me into my own. And moving on past that, I went to a theater arts high school. I went to college for acting. So the performance aspect of public speaking never really bothered me that much. It wasn't something that I needed to overcome, like you said. But I found in my training, in my acting experience, that working on the voice, working on the words that we use, really connected to the characters and then, intrinsically my own internal life.
Hmm.
Digging deeper into that, I found that we all use our voices in very particular ways. And really, the voice is the most vulnerable part of ourselves. We can't hide it. It's not something that we can easily go, oh, put on heels and I'm a little bit taller. We really need to be in our own voices, be in our own communication in order to share who it is we are. And I found that to be a really exciting prospect. I love this puzzle of, okay, if I'm feeling this way, then my voice is going to come out this way. But if I adjust something technically here, maybe I'll feel something different. It really goes both ways. And I find it very empowering. And my goal is to help others feel empowered in the same way. So luckily, I'm in a position where I get to be working at New York Speech Coaching, helping folks on their confidence, on their clarity, and really encouraging them to come out and be their most authentic selves in the world.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And One thing that really came up for me as you were speaking about almost the way that we mask or hide our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when we feel them, right? Oh, my voice is starting to crack. I need to hide my face or hide my voice or stop talking or retreat. Um,
Mm-hmm.
through your work of helping people be vulnerable, right, which is not hiding, and it's not masking, how did you come to understand the ways that we can actually lean into our emotions and present them in a way that is actually projecting a strength and help us to reclaim our energy in that moment so that we don't see certain emotions as really being a portrayal of weakness when they're really not?
Yeah. Yeah. Fabulous question. Really think it starts with the stories that we tell ourselves. We can say, oh, fear is bad. Sadness is bad. What I'm going to say might be bad, or people might judge me for it. And if we focus on these negative outcomes, they're going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I'm worried, oh my gosh, is Schaefer's not going to like what I have to say, I'm going to act that way. And that feeling is going to come across in this conversation. If we can dig deep into what are the stories that I'm telling myself, maybe I do know what I'm talking about. Maybe it's not bad to show fear or bad to show sadness. Maybe that's just the truth of the situation that I'm in right now. And maybe I'll just choose to share it with the person that needs to know. There can be strength in that presence and that acceptance.
That's so beautiful, and it makes me think about I was blessed to have a session with you, and I intend to have many more because you're so wonderful the way that you work with people, and the thing that really struck me was how many layers there are to this onion of how we are showing up in communication, and once you get curious about communication, as I am, as you are, and you start to say, "Okay, well, we start with understanding, right? We start with trying to visualize how it is that we're communicating. And we peel back one layer, and there's so many layers underneath. What does that process look like when someone comes to you, kind of this raw ball of, I want to get better, but they actually need an introduction even to the awareness of what it is they're seeking and what they need to work on?
Yes, yes, yes. It's different for everybody because some people come in, they're hot, they're going heavy, and they're saying, great, teach me how to speak. I want to be the CEO of this company, or I'm on track to being the CEO of this company, and I want to make sure that everybody hears me and tell me what I'm doing wrong. I love that fire. Bring the passion. What I don't like is the idea that we can speak incorrectly.
Mm.
There is no wrong way to speak. And I firmly, firmly believe that. So when people come in, not everybody, but often people come in and say, tell me what I'm doing wrong. I usually pump the brakes right away and say, I'm not going to tell you what you're doing wrong because you are doing nothing wrong. You are communicating because of where you've been. Maybe you learned in third grade that it was better to be quiet in class because the teacher praised you for being a model student, and now you speak quietly because of everything that happened since then. There's nothing wrong with speaking quietly. What's important is knowing how you want to come across, how you want to communicate, and then adjusting from there. So, first things first, I always say to folks, what are your goals? How do you want to come across as a speaker? Do you want to be loud? Do you want to grab a room and hold it? Do you want to be grounded and warm? Do you want to be funny? Do you want to be distant? Those are all absolutely valid ways to communicate. But the way we go about communicating in that way or in those ways are going to be different. So starting off with the goals is really the most important thing. And the second thing is talking about habits. Okay, I ask them to give me a little speech on a random thing. It gets them a little nervous.
It
You
does.
know.
I do.
What feelings came up, if you can remember, what feelings came up for you when I asked you to speak impromptu?
The one thing that has really come across to me on my journey of speaking and of just getting to know myself better and deciding at this season of life, as many people
Mm,
do when they reach their 40s, who am I and who do I want to be? And by the way, I get a choice. You don't necessarily realize that in your teens and 20s and early 30s. And midlife comes around and then you recognize, what character have I been playing and who do I want to be? And I think that's a very shared experience for many.
mm,
And so for me, one of the things that I recognized is this habit of need for to be right and to make everyone comfortable, and not to be right in the sense that, oh, I have to know everything because it makes me feel good. More of I think there was some very early life programming that I had to know the answers, and if I didn't, there was something wrong, like really wrong with me. And
mm.
I think that's why I became a physician, and why I went into certain things, because physicians have to know the answers, right? That's when actually the best physicians recognize when they don't know the answers. That's the truth. But when you're going to medical school, a lot of people are thinking, okay, I'm going to learn the truth, the answers.
The capital T truth.
The capital T
Absolutely.
truth of what it is to be a human, how to fix humans, how life should be, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, big backstory, but for me then to stand in front of you, someone that I respect so much, and was so excited to learn from, and just be completely, like you have spoken about, the vulnerability of speaking and using your voice, to just be completely bare naked without much of a prompt, just tell me about this thing. You completely feel like, they talk about when they say imagine yourself, imagine the crowd naked,
Yeah.
right? Often I think when you're speaking and you're in such a vulnerable space, you feel like that scenario has flipped, and that they can see every part of you. And I think that's where it is so empowering, the work you do with people, to basically explain all of the moving parts that are there, and it makes you feel less vulnerable. It makes you feel more empowered to use these tools, right? Like, okay, it's almost like you're putting on layers of clothing because you don't feel so out of control. I know what's going on. I know how my shoulders are. I know how my breath work is working. I know my eye contact, the tone of my voice, etc.
Absolutely. And I think you're tapping onto something that is across the board with everybody, which is we get up to speak whether we're prepared or not. Our heart is beating. Our brain is telling us you're not prepared, you're not ready, the audience sees all your flaws, and this feeling of anxiety, of urgency, of fight or flight really rises to the surface. When that happens, all of our old habits come into play because we don't feel in control, because we don't know what is within my control. Right now, all my monkey brain is thinking about is survival.
Yep.
But when you start breaking down, as you said, the different aspects of speech, your breath, your body language, your eye line and your eye contact, the pacing at which you talk. Going really, really fast is not going to really help you stay in control. So going a little bit slower might help. All of these things add up to a full conversation, a full speech, a full human being communicating. And knowing each part can be really, really helpful in, as you said before, reclaiming that power of speech.
It's so important. It's transformational. It really is transformational in your life when you feel empowered in that way. And it makes me curious, we come here in a very evolved state of our being with much evolution to come in the future, of course. But, we've come through a lot to be sitting and
Yeah.
having the conversation that we're having. And I always want to emphasize to people who are listening, if they're in a different stage, if they're in the messy middle, or they're just at the contemplative stage of trying to learn new skills, I think it's helpful to know the things, like I shared the story of how I felt standing in front of you earlier on in this journey. Were there things that as you were on this journey that you learned about yourself and the way you spoke that maybe surprised you?
Yes, I will say the biggest thing that surprised me in my own journey with public speaking is how defensive I got when my habits were called out. I really don't think, or I didn't think I was a defensive person. I really thought I was, oh, I'm so open. Oh yeah, I'm an actor, I can take direction. But there comes a feeling of, oh, but that's me. You're telling me that I'm doing something wrong. But I've been doing this my whole life. And again, nothing you're saying is wrong. I'm going to reiterate that. But the feeling is that there is something wrong here. And I do think it has helped me connect with my own clients because I really take the precaution to say, I know this is going to be vulnerable, or I won't go in for the jugular right away. Yeah, like I'll see a really big habit and be like, "You know what? That's for session 3. We got to we got to ease in and gain some trust between the two of us before I can talk about that." So, maybe I'll put that on the back burner. But it really, I think, has helped me approach my own coaching because, yeah, we can always say, work on your filler words, do this, do that. But the emotion that comes with speech coaching is human, is very human. And as much as I thought that I was self-contained when I was going through my own coaching sessions, I was still a big puddle of human being. So all that to say, for anybody going on your own journey, wherever you are, give yourself grace.
We do tend to give ourselves less, don't we, than others?
Mm-hmm. We're our own worst
Mm.
critics.
And I think also if we are very judgmental towards others, that's likely an indication of an even heightened level of judgment for us. But again, going to speech and being told that, well, it's not wrong, but is it communicating? Is it in line with your goals? And I think that's what's really helpful because what I find is many of us are carrying around these habits that we don't even think about. I will mention one. It is not speech related. Um, but it was so funny to me when I realized it. So I was told I was in a course of controlling situation for many moons in my life. And this person discouraged me from being a vegetarian. I'd been a vegetarian for 6 years. So
Hmm.
I stopped being a vegetarian because it didn't align with, home cooking and that sort of thing. And long after that person was no longer in my home, I was literally in the kitchen one day and I realized I was cooking meat and I was like, I don't like eating meat. Why am I doing this? And I'd been doing it for probably 15 plus years out of habit of what someone had told me was the right and necessary thing to do, even though it was really not something I wanted to do. But it was such a fascinating example of, hello, I have free will. What am I
Mm-hmm.
doing? And it was such a very finite example of something that it wasn't even just a habit. Like it was my morals and my ethics, right? Like there was a reason
Mm.
I'd made that choice that I had abandoned. And it was because that was the safe thing for me to do then. It made sense. It
Yeah.
kept me in graces and things, but it didn't serve me anymore. I could make my own choices. And it just makes me think about all of these habits we have. And it also
Mm.
translates to how we show up, like how small we are, how quiet we are. Is that what we want to do, does it align with our goals, or was it something that kept us safe or accepted at one part of our life? That those aren't the rules anymore. We don't have to follow those rules.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that, the first thing I'll say is let's thank our former selves for doing the thing that kept us safe in the past. You know, oh my God, I'm so glad that I spoke in this way 10 years ago because it got me where I needed to be now. That said, I can have the mindfulness and awareness to me to change the way I want to be, to change the way that I show up, to honor myself in this new way because I'm a different person than I was 10 years ago or 5 years ago or even yesterday. And so setting intentions and goals is huge. And I think on top of that is awareness, mindfulness. I mean, think about how many times you go throughout your day and you don't even think about what you're saying. You go to a coffee shop and you say something to the barista. What is it? I mean, maybe you don't even remember. I think it's a really important practice to get into the present moment with every conversation that is being had, whether it's with your mom, whether it's with the barista or the cashier at the grocery store, whether it's with your best friend or your boss. Those are all going to be different kinds of conversations. You might not want to show up as the same person in all of them, but the same amount of intention going into them will help empower you to be whoever you want to be, whenever you want to be it, give you back the royal you, give you back some more control over those habits that you want to leave behind.
Yeah, and how do you help people go from, so if you're a person, and I was definitely someone who had learned this as well. If you're a person who does, I'm involuting my shoulders. If, for those who aren't watching, I'm making myself small. If you're the person who keeps your head down and makes yourself small when you walk down the street, and you preemptively avoid coming shoulders to stay out of their way, right? If you have made
Yeah.
yourself as small as possible for a really long time, and when you come to see someone like Jackie and you say, no, that's who I am. I'm just I'm quiet, I'm introverted, and I'm kind, and I don't want to bump into anybody, right? So like that's not a survival mechanism. That's who I am. How is a way that we can start to question that, to get curious about, is this who you are, or are these behaviors that are keeping, they're somewhat of a blockade, or they're a stumbling block between you and your stated goals? Like, you came to me saying you
Mm.
want to be CEO and you want
Hmm.
to command a room, yet you're also coming with this body language, and when we say describing certain life events, clearly that's your MO. That's how you're operating. How do you help someone reframe that mentally so they can start to change how they're showing up physically?
The first thing that rang in my ears as you were talking about that was kindness. The way that this fictional client, you connected kindness with being small. First thing I would do would be to question whether you can be kind and big, whether you can be kind and take up space. I think that there are a lot of preconceptions about kindness, softness, about, I want to say, more feminine qualities sometimes that equal being small or being palatable or being
Mm.
polite. And I would just argue, can we challenge that? I know so many people, masculine, feminine, and everywhere in between, who are big, taking up big space, big energies, and they are the nicest, warmest, most engaging people that I know. So what I would say is can you reframe what you think kindness is or what you think politeness is? I also can be really polite and throw my energy across the room. Just because you take up space doesn't mean that other people can't take up space. It doesn't mean that you can't invite other people in as well. So, all this to say, the first thing I would say is challenge your preconceived notions of what it means to be small, what it means to be big. And after that, play. Play around. Find a safe space, find a safe person that you can work with. I feel lucky that you, Dr. Shafer, felt safe enough to be in my space and to discover what it meant to change your body language, to change the volume of your voice, and to change the energy that you were giving in that hour we were working together. Because we really can't know something before we do it. We can't know how it's going to feel until it happens. So, whether it's alone or with somebody that you trust, or if it's with a coach, if whoever is listening, if you're trying to figure out, well, how do I change the way that I am, but still feel authentic with it, just find a place where you can change. And maybe you'll hate it and you'll throw it away and you don't need to keep it and you'll go back to what feels comfortable and that's exactly what you need and that's great. But giving yourself the space to discover and play around, I think, is really, really important and not something that we often think about.
I recall some exercises we did, and they're really, really fun, and they make you feel really, really silly. But once we're in that state of play is when growth can happen, right? We can't
Mm,
grow when we're in our state that we've decided is us. Often, if we have to put so much energy into being that state, maybe it's a mask, and how do
yeah.
we question that? How do we if we can play? Well, maybe that's closer to our state. And it makes me think of Ariana Grande because she's done a lot of speech work
Mm,
and she now has a very different presenting voice than she used to. And
mm-hmm.
it did end up getting a response in some circles of inauthenticity. But then the question is, well, who is her authentic self? Who gets to determine that? And is that allowed to evolve? It's just so fascinating.
Yeah. As you were saying that, I got chills. Who, really, who gets to determine that other than the speaker herself? And we can't know another person fully. I mean, unless you live with them and you spend every day with them and they share things with you. But the way that somebody presents themselves is their choice.
Hmm.
And I I love to give people the benefit of the doubt in situations like this, where, yeah, she, for instance, Ariana Grande, she's someone who grew up in front of the media. And that is notoriously difficult for anybody who has been famous since they were young to find out who they are without deferring to other people's expectations and what they want them to be. That's why so many, we think about Miley Cyrus. She rebelled and then became her own person, and now she is her own other being other than Hannah Montana, right? From so many years ago. And yeah, I think it's important, whether you have a wide audience or not, to embrace the idea of evolving is okay. I'm allowed to change. I'm allowed to try something on for a day, for a year, for 5 years, and let that be true because nobody else gets to decide what's true.
And you are your most important audience.
You're the one that you're going to need to live with for the rest of your life. So
And the show
make
must go on.
the show must go on. Make friends with them. Make sure you're on the same team.
I love that. And it makes me think of a word you use that resonated as when those light bulb moments when you realize, oh, that's the perfect way to describe the decisions we're making that betray us. When you were talking about being kind, you mentioned being palatable. And what I thought about that was, well, do I want to be dinner, or do I just want to show up as me and get to exit after? Like, why am I making myself something that you can literally swallow?
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Why am I here for other people's enjoyment? Can I be here for my own?
Exactly. Because, like we just said, I'm going to leave. I'm going to be the one dissecting how that went. And if
Mm-hmm.
you're really intentional, like I am, and I know you are, and thinking, okay, I have a goal. Does this suit the goal? What did I learn? How am I going to build on this? And kind of stay out of that negative self-talk vortex. It'll maybe try to pull you in if maybe things didn't go that well at
Mm-hmm.
this dinner party. And that makes
Mm-hmm.
me think about, so besides signing up for classes, which I highly recommend, I think they're life changing and there are wonderful books and things you can read to start this journey as well. If you are thinking, Jackie, Dr. Shafer, I don't even want to go to a dinner party, let alone have a speech or run a meeting or be on a stage. Let's start there. I have feelings of anxiety or just not wanting to commit to things that have me speaking even one-on-one. If someone is interested in breaking through that feeling of being incapable of having that communication, but they're having that fear, how do you encourage them to get started? Like volunteering in the community, or go to that party, or join that club. What are some really easy, actionable ways that people can get started? So we talk a lot about getting the data to prove that negative self-talk wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So then you feel ready then to take the class, read the book, work with a coach, because you've already got enough data to show this may be how things have been, but it doesn't have to be how it continues to be for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the idea of taking a class or volunteering, doing something that you will enjoy doing, that you want to do, and then having the social interaction be secondary to that. Another thing that you can think about if you are invited to a dinner and you're like, oh God, yeah, that's mostly talking. I mean, some eating, but it's mostly talking with people. Something that I like to offer is when you are going to go, figure out one way you can have fun. Give yourself a goal to connect with somebody who you think they're really funny, or you love their dress and you just tell them, hey, I really love your dress. And you have one good interaction. And then you figure out the next thing that is lighting your fire of like, I'm actually enjoying this thing, and follow that. And there's no right thing that's good for you. It's going to be different for everybody. Maybe this person loves talking to the guy who loves talking about museums. And so I'm just going to ask them about museums because that's super interesting to me. But it's really boring to this person. So they're going to talk to this other lady about ice skating. There's, there's so many different ways to have fun when speaking with other people and connecting with other people. So I would just say follow the joy in that, and know that everybody else is thinking about themselves just as much as you are thinking about yourself.
Hmm.
For better or for worse, unless you're Ariana Grande, nobody cares about you that much. you know? But if you're having a good time, then that's all people are going to remember is your energy. Another thing that I love to share and offer in situations where people are like, oh, I don't know, I have social anxiety, I'm really bad at making small talk. Small talk, small talk, small talk is a huge difficulty, which I absolutely get. It's hard because what are we talking about? Uh, the weather? Like, does that mean that you hate me? It's hard to know. I will say two things about that actually. One, small talk is a building block of emotional connection. The things we're talking about might not be the most important, but the action of talking, the action of connecting with somebody else is so crucial because human beings are social. We want to be with other people, whether we like it or not. There's something natural and instinctual in that. So reminding yourself, okay, this small talk is actually the action of me making a connection with another person. And that's crucial for survival.
Mm. It's a momentum builder, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. And you never know where it's going to go. And the second thing that I wanted to bring up was I want to encourage people to go into these conversations that might have small talk that you're dreading and bring in the behavior that you want to see in the other person. If you really want the other person to be enjoying themselves, smiling, maybe laughing, make sure you bring that energy too. You know, Dr. Shafer, I'm sure you can speak on this, but humans mirror each other. Mirroring happens all the time, and that is another form of communication. So going into a situation with dread and holding on to that energy is going to bring the conversation to a dreadful place. But going in with excitement is going to bring the conversation to a more exciting place,
So
probably.
how can you fake it till you make it? Because I hear
Mm,
our listeners because they talk to me, they talk to me. So I hear
yeah,
them in my head saying, but I'm not excited. I already told you I'm afraid. So are there exercises kind of like we've done, and I'm going to mess it up, but where we go with a different tone and the different, when we
mm.
play with our voices, right? So we can do that. But then how do we play with our emotions? How do we trick ourselves into be excited to bust out that small talk for that night?
The first thing I want to say is that question that you asked yourself. But I'm not excited. I guess that's not a question; it's a
Mm,
statement. But
a
I'm not
statement.
excited. What could you be excited about? The food?
Mm.
The the venue? Oh my God, I've never been to this restaurant before. If anything, I'm gonna experience that new thing. Great. Check. We're done. That's all you need to do for the night.
And that informs your small talk. I love that because if you're questioning yourself, what am I excited about? What can I get? At least a little blip of positive emotion. That can be the small talk. That can be what you start on, not the weather, because I don't care about the weather.
Right. Because the weather's not making me excited.
Yeah, but I'm excited to be here. And then maybe that'll get them talking about places. If you're a person who loves places, you love travel, maybe that just sparks that conversation. So I love that. Focus on genuinely, you don't have to put on a front, just focus on the things that light you up. That's awesome.
Absolutely. And then on top of that, ask questions. Ask questions, ask questions. People love to talk about themselves. And I say that without judgment because I love to talk about myself too. But it's really helpful to know that other people will often respond if you ask good, meaningful questions. Not about, do you like the weather today? But if you say, okay, you don't know somebody and you don't know how to break the ice, introduce yourself. That'll be a push, right? That'll be an emotional, okay, I got to push myself out of my comfort zone here. Hi, my name is Jackie. What's your name? You introduce yourself and then you say, great, what do you do? Or how did you end up here tonight? Broad question. Once you get that response, pick up on the next thing. Pick up on something that they say that you can ask about again. So, oh, I know so and so through college. Oh, where did you go to college? I went here. Oh, did you like Vermont? Oh, digging deeper into things that they're giving you, being curious. Interested people are interesting. That is the way to start a new relationship, even for a night. It's just asking questions and really caring about the answer.
Yeah, Lewis Howes, who has the podcast, The School of Greatness, that is the thing that he credits as
Mm.
basically the entire basis for his success in what he does. His whole career is that he would go to dinner parties and he would ask people questions and they would know nothing about him because he would have disclosed absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the evening, it was very common for people to say he was the most interesting person that they'd met all night.
Wow. Well, there you go. You don't need to take my word for it.
I think it's been borne out. And I think, again, it reminds me of my programming that I had to show up knowing everything. No one
Mm.
knows everything. So to be enough, to be worthy of being in a space, like you had to be completely prepared. Whereas what I've learned with life is actually if you can take on this mindset of being flexible, rigidity is death, right? Because you hit something that's rigid, it just falls to pieces. Whereas if you take on a stance of mental flexibility and a learning mindset and you understand, I'm an empty vessel, fill me up. Teach me something.
Yeah.
That's a different experience and that's a growth mindset. So I love this. When you are meeting people for the first time, or even just in your experience working in entertainment and seeing people who are newer
Mm.
having their first auditions or experiences on stage, are there themes in the way that people present themselves when they're nervous that are things that they can keep an eye out for, or maybe set a video camera up and do a little speech or something like that?
Mm.
So little things they can look for as actionable things to get started on the process of feeling more confident in the way they speak.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So these are things that our listeners might have heard before, so apologies if I'm doubling down, but very common nervous tics would be one, speaking very, very quickly, trying to get the words out as fast as possible so the moment can end as fast as possible. I used to be a big someone who did that all the time, and it really never made anything better. It only made things worse. Speaking quickly can indicate nervousness, can also make us feel nervous.
Mm.
So slowing down is really going to help with that. What's going to help with slowing down is breathing deeply. You and I talked about this in our session, and we brought it up a few times. Breathing deeply and calmly. I have a friend who's a life coach, and we were chatting one day just about coaching and about nerves and all of this. And she said something which I have been quoting since our conversation. Our thoughts mirror our breath, and our breath mirrors our thoughts. If our breath is ragged and quick and shallow, we're not going to be able to think very clearly. And we're going to be stuck in this fight or flight or freeze mode that is instinctual, right? It doesn't feel like something we can just logically turn off, but we can logically think to ourselves, am I breathing? Where am I breathing? How quickly or slowly am I breathing? And the deeper, slower, calmer that we can be with our breaths, the slower we can be speaking, the more control we'll have with our speech, and the easier it will be to invite in new thoughts. The last thing I'll say, so, we got quick speaking, which is not super helpful, or quick and anxious breath, which is not super helpful. The last thing I'll say is also body language. Fidgeting, If we are standing, shifting back and forth on one leg or another, maybe playing with our hands, maybe playing with our hair, all of these things are adding to the nervous energy. So not only is it indicating nervousness to our audience, it's also telling ourselves that we're nervous. We can tap into that breath, tap into that mindfulness, as I mentioned earlier. Can you be present with yourself in this moment? It might be scary, but hopefully when you're public speaking, it's not as life-threatening as if you were being chased by a bear. If you're a bear, yes, let's let the anxiety shoot through the roof so you can run away as quickly as possible. We don't want to get rid of that fight or flight adrenaline, but we want to lessen it when we're in a position where we're not really going to die. So slowing down the breathing, slowing down the speaking, and finding calm stillness or calm control in the body are all things that can help relieve that nervousness and boost confidence just through the act of doing them.
I love that. And I want to invite a moment of grace for yourself if you are someone who does feel that fight or flight feeling with
Mm,
speaking, as so many people do. We started off the episode acknowledging that this is really tough for many people to not reinforce those fear feelings with shame,
mhm,
because at the end of the day, the very base part of our brains that are involved in these circuits that have been around for eons, they don't know the difference of our fear between the bear and the stage. It all feels like it's going to kill us. But the one thing we have as humans is we have this frontal part of our brain that is so big and so well developed. But we have to when the bottom part of our brain is activated, we have to, like you said, tap into the breath work. We have to say, we can be the adult in the room. Our frontal lobes can be the adult in the room to say, this is scary. But why is it scary? Is it life-threatening? No. Okay, let's do our breath work. Let's get back. And now let's, with clear vision, look at what's in front of us and recognize we're not in danger. And that's, I think, so important to recognize if you are someone who gets stuck in that state of dysregulation. It wasn't your choice to get there. That was hardwired into you, but you can train yourself to help yourself out of that state. And that's where the beautiful work you do really comes into play. Of it's more than speech training, it's nervous system regulation training, and it's so valuable, and it translates into all of our lives when we're in those situations where we feel, I like to use the word triggered. And that's just that feeling in our gut, because our nervous system's starting to get riled up, hormones are starting to get released. We do have another choice. And the more we've practiced it through things like dinner parties and
mhm.
Zoom calls, we
Or
can
even
respond.
talking to your barista. I
Yeah.
mean, if going to a dinner party is something that feels out of your reach, doing something even smaller and keeping awareness during that really small interaction. Challenge yourself to ask the barista how their day is going and really wait for the answer, and then respond to it. And something else that I just want to touch on that you said that I haven't said yet, but I want to highlight it is acknowledging the fear. Acknowledging it, because the more we push it away, the more it's just going to want to keep knocking on that door. But as we said, there's no bad emotions. Fear is not bad. It just is. And we can take the feeling of fear as an opportunity to say, why am I feeling this way? Am I in danger? If I'm not, what can I do to help regulate my nervous system? Can I breathe deeper? Can I do these other things? But making sure you give yourself the space to acknowledge it is really, really important.
It is. And working with someone like yourself, Jackie, is so So wonderful because you create such a safe space to have these conversations, to look at how you're presenting. Because as you said, it's so vulnerable. And when you take a step back and you realize how you've been showing up in the world and you realize it's not aligned, there are some emotions that come around that as well that need to be dealt with. So I think also, giving some space between the coaching may be helpful so that when you show up the next day, you've done some thinking on that and you're out of that. Like you mentioned, the defensive state, that's a totally normal place to be in when things come to our attention and we're thinking, oh no, I've been doing that for the last blank years. And no, maybe that time that that person told me I came off that way. Huh. Oh. Huh.
Yeah,
Huh.
offer some time for reflection because that's when a lot of the work happens.
Exactly. It's not about the work. And by the way, that is so much just about life in general. We're all go, go, go. If we don't schedule time for reflection, downtime to really synthesize what we're learning, we won't synthesize it. It's just more noise in a very noisy world. And again, that's something that I love about coaching in general and your speech coaching is it's not more noise. It's actually helping you clear out space for showing up as yourself and stepping into the life and the way that you're presenting yourself that you want. So thank you so much for the important work you're doing. It's really important.
Thank you so much. I'm glad that we were able to meet and work together and now are able to really be talking about this because I am such a huge fan of the work that you do. And, hearing you talk about this go, 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 I mean, you are a multi hyphenate up the wazoo. I mean, I do not even understand how you can do it all so well. So just hearing you talk about the importance of giving ourselves this downtime, time to journal, time to take a walk, and one of my friends gave me a really great suggestion one day. I was trying to work through something. And I was like, I just don't know how I feel about it. I just don't know. And she goes, just take a walk and speak a voice memo to yourself. You don't even need to listen back to it, but just the act of speaking out loud and of working through those things without an audience can be really transformative. So I'll just tack that in at the end there as something. Again, it's not my pearl of wisdom, it's my good friends, but I find that that can be really helpful in synthesizing and really just processing what we're all going through. If you don't have the ability to go see a coach, if that's not something that you're able to do at this time, you can still set aside half an hour for yourself to really think and breathe and get in your body.
It's wonderful. I do that. I know many people who do, and I'd love that to be this week's challenge for our listeners to just try it out and tell us in a few weeks what you learned from that experience of doing so, because it's really incredible. And it also is an excuse to get out walking because it's hard to do voice notes when you're in the shower. I know a lot of us do our best thinking we're in the shower and then we have to clamber out and make the note. But so that's challenging. But if you set aside that time where you're just physically in your body, but your head is clear, you're not listening to music, right? You don't
Mhm.
have an agenda of things you want to do, but you're just present. It's amazing the things that bubble up and the reflection that can occur. So I love that. Jackie, thank you so much for being here on the show. It has been so informative and such a safe and inspiring space. How can our storytellers here on Talks with Dr. Shafer connect with you and learn more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you said, I work with New York Speech Coaching as a public speaking coach. You can go to their website. It's www.newyorkspeechcoaching.com. We are based in New York. I'm based in New York, but we also do virtual sessions as well. So, for people all across the country, the world, wherever that is still a possibility to connect, my email is jackie@newyorkspeechcoaching.com. And I also have an Instagram for my coaching. It's let's talk underscore with Jackie. So if you want to give that a follow, I'll I'm posting some videos and tips and tricks and all of these things that we've been talking about today. Happy to connect there as well.
Amazing. Definitely follow Jackie and make sure that you share with us your impressions from today's episode, any resources that you found really helpful, and we will help one another on our speech journey. Thank you, storytellers, for being on the show. We appreciate your time and would love to hear your takeaways. Share with someone who would love this discussion too. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Talks with Dr. Shafer where you enjoy listening to podcasts so you don't miss out on any of the inspiring episodes we have coming up. Until next time, stay safe and take care. I'll talk to you soon.